Hello everyone, welcome back. Welcome back to Owensboro, Kentucky. Welcome back on this January 31st in the year 2026. As I mentioned to Don a little earlier, I'm just about a few days, over 2 weeks away from being 76. Seems like a long time. I'm not sure where all the time went. I can remember when I was in Pasadena, California, and now here I am in Owensboro, Kentucky. Well, I just hope I have a few more healthy, good years left in me. We have uploaded the song already. And the song today was based upon the words and the ideas of 1 Corinthians 13. And before we get into the installments, I thought it would be good for us to read this chapter again, because we are told that God is love. And we are told that we're supposed to be like Jesus Christ, that should be our goal. And if our goal is to be like Jesus Christ, then our goal is to be filled with a spirit of godly love. And Paul so succinctly and somewhat poetically approach that subject here in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. He said, "Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and yet if I have not charity." So Paul is saying, I could be the greatest orator ever to walk the earth. I could be the greatest preacher, as it were, to ever walk the earth. And yet, if I do not have at my foundation charity, and that's an old English word, I prefer the word godly love. If I do not have godly love, now again, godly love is different than human love. Human love, Don, we sort of talked about this a few moments ago, but human love can be summed up in basically one word, one concept. Do you remember what that concept is, Don?
Self-centeredness, jealousy.
Self-centeredness, being selfish. You know, I want this for my life. I want that. I want to have the beautiful young lady to be my wife. I want to have children who look up to me. I want to have a nice car. I want to have a nice career. I want to make a tremendous amount of money so I can provide myself toys and gadgets and things. It's more oriented to self. Godly love works on a different principle. Godly love isn't concentrated on oneself, but godly love is typified by the life of Jesus Christ. I wrote a song not too long ago. I think I've played it. Jesus could have saved himself from the misery which he suffered on the cross. He could have called to his angels the night that he was arrested by the palace guard. He could have snapped his fingers, and his angelic being would have rushed in, and they could eviscerated every palace guard that was there to take Jesus under arrest. And Jesus could have flown off with them and totally forgotten about human beings. He could have done it, but he chose not to do it. Because Jesus, in his love, in his godly love for his human creatures, he chose to sacrifice his life so that all of us and all of mankind would have a Savior. He could have avoided the slashes of the whips. He could have avoided the pain of the nails being thrust into his wrist, into his ankles. He could have avoided being up there on that cross for 6 hours, suffering every moment, suffering every breath he took. He could have avoided it all because he could have thought of himself. But he did something very unhuman-like. He thought of all of us. Now, if nothing else, we should be eternally in a spirit of gratitude, knowing that Jesus did that for us. And in a way, to the best of our ability and to the best of the ability that God gives us through his Spirit, we should live our life sacrificing for others, giving to others, thinking of others at times even before we think of ourselves. And there are people who actually do that. Now, I'm sad to say that those people may not receive in return the gratitude that they deserve. Because again, if you do something for a human being who is thinking like a human being selfishly, that human being may not have enough dignity to attempt to give back to the other person a sense of thanksgiving, a sense of love and appreciation, a sense of sharing their life. But they might just take their life and run off and forget the person that gave an awful lot to them. And I'm not talking just about material things, but if you spend weeks and months praying for someone, you've given them a great gift. And oh, by the way, that song, the author, and he did not actually write the song. I spoke of him last week in the message entitled "A Message for Walker." That singer was the name Ricky Skaggs, a bluegrass singer. And the name of the song was "Somebody's Praying." And I did, after we turned the camera off, I turned my computer on and we found that song and we listened to it several times. And throughout this week, I have listened to it. Somebody's praying. I can feel it. What's the value of someone who is actually praying for another person? What if that prayer by person A results in God Almighty and Jesus Christ saving the other person's life because of their prayer, or protecting them from a horrible accident or a disease, or giving them strength in a time of weakness, maybe a time where they might consider giving up. I just thought of something. Once upon a time in my life, I knew a person for whom I was very fond. I wanted this person to succeed. And they were enrolled in a nursing school. And they came upon a hard time. They had taken a test, a very important test, and this person didn't do very well on that test. And they felt like that by not doing well on that test, they possibly would flunk out of nursing school. That person sent me a message. I could tell something was wrong. Number one, the person should have been in class. And we kept typing back and forth. And I said, "What's going on? Something's bothering you." And he proceeded to tell me that he had flunked out on the test that he thought he was going to do very well on. He was totally discouraged, and instead of being at his classroom, he had gone to the gym where he liked to work out. And he basically told me he had given up. He had thrown up his hands and said, "I quit. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough." And then this young man asked me to pray for him. And I did. And he wanted me to pray for him right then and there. I think maybe we ended up talking on the phone instead of texting. And at the end of that prayer, he asked me to type out the main highlights and to send it to him so that he could go back into his phone and read what I had said. And somewhere in that process of conversation, the old football coach came out in me. And I had a coach-athlete talk with him, sort of like a father-son talk, where you take the gloves off and say what you're really thinking, not out of meanness, but in order to get a point across. And I'll just use the name Fred. Fred is obviously not his name. But I said, "Fred, you got to get your ass up off the canvas." I said, "Okay, you've been knocked down. You've been embarrassed. You've been humiliated. You want to quit." But I said, "You can't quit. Because life doesn't allow you just to throw your hands up in the air and say, 'I quit.' I said, get back into the ring and fight. Fight, damn it. Fight like your life depends upon it. Because it does. Because if you don't pass this, what are you going to do? Go back to that construction job you once had? Hammering nails when it's 5 degrees above zero? What life is that going to be for you, for your future children? I was pretty hard on him. But again, I loved him like he was my own son. And if he had been my son, that's what I would have told him. Life is tough. But you gotta be tougher. And realize that you have things on your side. Number one, you got people like me on your side. And most importantly, you have Jesus Christ who wants you to succeed. There was a song many years ago, a country song. I beg your pardon, I never promised you a rose garden. Along with the sunshine, there's going to be a little rain at times. So I tried to pump him up. I tried to challenge him. And I said, get your butt back over to that classroom and work. Study. Try. If you've been studying a little bit, then double it. Study it twice as much. But you have to pass those courses. Otherwise, your life is going to disappear like a sandcastle in the ocean as a big wave comes up and just washes it away. Well, at the end of that father-son talk, Fred wrote me a short note. And he said, thank you. I needed to hear that. Now, Fred was a former high school athlete. I think he recognized what I was saying. I wasn't saying it to embarrass him. I wasn't saying it to make him feel worse. I was trying to put a little backbone in him, a little spirit within him. And I'm happy to say that on a following test, a day or two later, he not only got 100%, he got like 106% because he answered 1 or 2 extra credit questions. And I'm happy to announce that Fred did indeed go on and graduate from nursing school, and now he is a full-time registered nurse. And I happened to catch a glimpse of him a few nights ago at a restaurant. Now, the group he was with, that was a complicated group. I'm not going to even try to explain what was going on. But he did take a little time out to look at me and give me a nod, like, thank you, Michael. I appreciated the nod. Fred has a brother which is very difficult for me to appreciate. I think his brother is a smartass. Wouldn't give you a nickel for him. But Fred is different. There's some goodness in Fred. There's some wholesomeness in Fred. There's a spirit of joy in Fred. And I'm very thankful to know that when Fred was in trouble, he didn't turn to his mommy, and he didn't turn to his daddy, and he didn't turn to his brother, and he didn't turn to his girlfriend. The one he called was Michael C., because he knew I would tell him the truth. And with the help of Jesus Christ, I did tell him the truth. And it helped him to get up off that canvas and to wipe the dust off and to roll up his sleeves and to get back into the game of being a student. And Fred learned and Fred won. So I'm very thankful to Jesus Christ for looking after my young friend. But if I were a typical human being, I would have said something like, Fred, don't bother me. I'm busy. I got my troubles. I got my problems. And I just would have ignored him. But I took the time to care because there had been a whole lot of times in my life when I needed a friend, when I needed a brother to help me to get up. Sometimes to help me to get up physically. Sometimes to help me to get up mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And I think about all the times that Jesus Christ has been there helping me to overcome. Helping me to overcome when Satan wants to destroy me. And when there are human beings that are working for Satan, trying to destroy me. Well, through the grace, the love, the mercy of Jesus Christ, they haven't done so yet, and I hope they never do. But yes, you can be an eloquent speaker. There have been a lot of eloquent speakers throughout history that we read about in our history books. They could hold the attention of a huge crowd, and they could be hanging on every word. And yet, as Paul says, if they speak with the tongues of men, and even as angels, and have not godly love, he says that person is become like a cymbal, a tinkling cymbal, just over there in a cabinet not far beyond Don. There's a little tinkling cymbal out of brass. In fact, there are two of them that I've had since I was about 10 years of age. Don, do you know how I got those little cymbals? Those little...
Probably from a play at school.
I got it from singing in a song, a Christmas song, at Eastern Star. That's a sorority outfit, sort of similar to, I forget what, Masons or something. It's like the female version.
Eastern Star.
And this, I forget the song. Star of Wonder, Star of Night, da 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 da. ever guide us with thy perfect light. Yeah, I was just a kid. And I received a gift of those little symbols, those little bells. And I wish if I had thought of it, I would have gotten them out and showed them to you. But where I am right now, I'm sort of stuck. It would take me about 5 minutes to get all of the equipment out of the way. I am become as sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And it has a little small sound. It's not very impressive. But if you don't have a godly love being a part of you, all of your words are weak. He said, and though I have the gift of prophecy. Now think about that. Paul is saying, even though I have the gift of prophecy, where I could see the future and share it with others, and yet if I have not godly love, I am nothing. I think most of us would be truly astounded if we were to meet a real prophet, a prophet of God, and to know that they were in communication with Jesus Christ and God the Father, and that whatever they said would actually come true. If we got close enough to them, we'd probably ask them all types of questions. The conversation would probably last, far beyond midnight until the sun coming up the next morning. Tell me more, tell me more. Share more with me. But Paul said, if I have the gift of prophecy, and I understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have so much faith, so that I could remove a mountain at my command, and yet if I have not godly love, I am nothing. Where I used to live out in Arizona, I would guess at one time in its history, there was a small cone out to the east of town that probably had been volcanic at one time. And you could see where chunks of lava had turned back into stone, and they were blackened, both because of their origin and because of the burning sun, millennia after millennia. And that town, at one point in its history, had gone up with white paint and painted all of those black chunks with white paint, and actually put the initial of their town. And it became something that everyone in the community very well knew of. And it was a small mountain. I mean, it wasn't like a Rocky Mountain, but probably 2,000 feet up into the air. I know once or twice I climbed up that mountain. I think once I drove up that mountain. And once, Don, I flew an ultralight aircraft around that mountain. An aircraft which I owned. At times I was a foolish young man, Don. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, I did not crash and die using that ultralight aircraft. But if I could go back to that town in Arizona and exhibit so much faith that I could say to that mountain, just completely fall over and disintegrate into rocks. And if I actually did that, that would be a powerful miracle. And yet Paul says, and if I have not godly love, I am nothing. Paul says in verse 3, and though I bestow all of my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned as a martyr, and yet if I have not godly love, it profits me nothing to even sacrifice my life. And then Paul in chapter 4 begins to describe what godly love actually is. And it gives us a roadmap by which to live our life. And maybe every day, or maybe every other day, or once a week, you could sit down with yourself and ask yourself the question, do I have these qualities? Do I exhibit these spiritual strengths? Or do I act just like an ordinary, everyday human being? Notice what he said in verse 4. Godly love suffers long. Now sometimes you read that phrase and you think of patience. Long suffering is patience. And I think when I was younger, a younger man in my 20s, I always translated long suffering as patience. And then at some point in my life, I realized that patience is relatively a short period of time. I can wait in line at my bank for 2 or 3 people until it's my turn to walk up to the cashier. I can wait in line at my pharmacy for 2 or 3 people until it's my turn to walk up to the pharmacy to have my prescription filled. I can sit a minute or two at my table while I wait my waitress or waiter to come to my table to take my order. That's being patient. But long-suffering means the ability to wait a long, long time, all the while hurting inside, suffering, wanting somehow for the situation to change. You know, we read about the man who had the son, the so-called prodigal son. Apparently the man had worked hard his entire life and had become rather wealthy by those standards of that day. And he had 2 sons. And at some point in the young man's youth, he decided he didn't need his father, but he wanted his inheritance. He wanted the money that his father had promised him. Does that remind you of anything, Don? Don't say too much.
Yes.
Do you know where I'm coming from here?
Yes, where you may be going.
Well, just keep it to yourself. And he approached his father and probably said, well, I'm a young man now and I want to go out on my own. And I don't need you anymore. And I don't need to show you compassion anymore. And I don't need to show you thanksgiving anymore. So just give me my half of the inheritance and I'll be gone. I'm sure the father was very hurt. But he did. as the son had requested, and gave him a huge portion of money, and the son went his way. And the son attempted to live life the way he thought he should. Well, apparently the son did not make good decisions. And he went through all that money, and in the end, the son was virtually a beggar. He was without a home. He was without someone who loved him. He was without money. And he probably was content to eat the scraps that other people threw away. And reality sunk in. I should go back to my father and work as a servant for him. Because if I do, I know I'll have a place to sleep, and I know that I'll have 3 meals a day. And I will just be his servant. So he decided to go back to his home, to go back to his friend. Now some of the other workers saw the son returning, went to the father and said, "Your son, he's returning back to you. He's on his way." And the father said, "We're going to have a feast. Kill one of the cattle. We're going to cook it up, barbecue it, prepare the best food you can, probably bring out the wine, all of the special accoutrements that go with a feast." And the father and the friend greeted his son with love and thanksgiving. He once thought his son might have been dead. And yet eventually his son came back to him. His brother was a smartass, and I hope I don't offend anybody with that, but the group of people I saw the other night in the restaurant, there were 2 brothers. And the other brother, in my opinion, always has been a smartass and probably always will be, until Jesus Christ gets hold of him. And the other brother was greatly offended. In fact, he got so angry he just got up and pouted and went away by himself. The father was very loving. And when he realized his other son was not around, he probably went looking for him. Who knows, maybe he found him out in the stables, sitting on a bale of hay, feeling sorry for himself. And sort of came up with the story. "I've been loyal to you from the very beginning, and I've never left you. And yet my brother disrespected you. He took off. He wasted everything you gave him. Now he comes back, and you treat him like an honored guest." And the father had to tell the son, You've always been my son, and you always will be my son. But your brother, I feared, was dead. And he's come back to us. And the father probably thought, I'm not going to miss out on this opportunity to let him know that I loved him from the beginning, that I have always loved him, and that I will continue to love him. That's godly love. Godly love that never fails, never quits hoping. I imagine that father every day prayed to the Almighty that his son would return. You know, things happen like that in life. At times a person can give everything they have to another, and for some reason, out of selfishness, the person to whom they have loved and cared for and wished for and prayed for, they just turn their back and walk away. And yet the original person never forgets how important they were to them. Maybe that person saved their life one time. And they feel an eternal bond. And they know that in some respects, that person was brought into my life to help my life, to change my life, and literally to save my life. Godly love will never forget. I'm just glad that the father in the parable we just spoke, I'm so thankful that he was allowed to receive his son back into his family, back into his arms, back into his life, back into his love. You have to feel for that man. And you have to feel for the son. The son that had left had been a foolish son. No doubt about it. But at least he had the good sense to know my father will at least help me and keep me alive. Because right now I don't have anything. I've squandered it all. Yes, folks, I can relate to that story. And Don probably knows about what I'm speaking. True or false, Don?
True.
Charity, godly love, verse 4, suffers long. Suffering long suffering. Again, it's more than patience for a minute or two. It can suffer for weeks, for months, and for years. But in the end, a true believer knows that eventually Jesus Christ will work out all of the problems. But in the meantime, they have to continue to suffer. Godly love is kind. What a simple thing to do, to be kind to another human being. To have empathy for them, to feel for them, to share with them, to try to encourage them, to try to lift them up. You know, kindness can be expressed in so many different ways. I think to myself, there are people who, if they simply sent me a text message expressing kindness, that it would mean everything to me. Or for someone to say, we haven't seen each other for a while, let us to get together and let us share a meal, let us talk. Let us bring together the bonds which have begun to loosen. Let us strengthen the knot that holds us together. A simple telephone conversation. A handshake or a hug. How much a hug would mean when you feel defeated, when you feel lost, when you feel abandoned. Just the simple act of one human being embracing another to say, I'm on your side, and I always will be. I've never forgotten you, and I never will. I care for you now. I will care for you eternally. Kindness. He says next, godly love envies not. I've known people who buy a new car. Well, good for them. I'm just hoping that my car starts in the morning and gets me to where I want to go. If a friend of mine who maybe have been by themselves for a while were to meet someone and form a special friendship, and that friendship were to grow into something special, one should be happy for them. If that should become a future family, well, wonderful. There's no reason to be envious of another person's accomplishment or of a blessing. In the end, it all comes from Jesus Christ. So if Jesus Christ has chosen to bless their life, then be happy that Jesus has shared that with them. Godly love vaunts not itself. Doesn't get all proud. Have you ever been with somebody and they've always got to tell you what they've done? So if you say, well, I went out and I refereed a junior high volleyball match, and I made $120. All of a sudden they tell you, well, how they went to a big volleyball competition and made $700. Well, why do you do that? Let the person who made $120 to feel good about what they have done. But to try to puff up yourself, that's the very next word he says. Godly love is not puffed up, is not full of vanity, is not always trying to one-up the other person. If somebody gets a new car, wonderful, I'm glad they can afford it. The question I would ask, why do they keep wrecking the cars they've had? Maybe they go too fast. Maybe they aren't very careful driving. He says in verse 5, godly love does not behave itself unseemly. That means improperly. Godly love does not make a scene when it's not required. Someone may bring to your life a dramatic scene, and if they force you, you may have to engage them in some type of debate. It might be a verbal debate. It might be a psychological debate. It might even be a type of physical intimidation. And if they do, then you have to stand your ground. But don't be the one that creates a problem. I must say, the other night, when I was leaving that restaurant, I could have made a scene. And I'll be honest, a part of me would have loved doing it at the time. I could embarrass that one person badly. But I remembered these words. Godly love does not behave unseemly. And I chose just to walk on by without saying a word. Now again, the human part of me would have enjoyed shaking things up. But the godly part of me would not have been proud of it when it was all said and done. And that's something I really had to weigh. And I'll tell you the truth, I thought about doing it. I really thought about doing it. But then Jesus Christ within me said, no, Michael, don't do it. Now's not the time. Now's not the place. And in the end, Michael, I will settle this for you. In the end, I will take care of the problem. Vengeance is mine. Thus says Jesus Christ. I will repay. It says, godly love does not seeks, well, I almost need my glasses there, seeks not her own. Now I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
I don't want to get too specific here, but again, I actually want to make the point. I have known Catholics who only want to hang out with Catholics.
Ah.
I have known Baptists who only really want to hang out with other Baptists. I have known Mormons who only really wanted to hang out with other Mormons. You get the drift where I'm going?
Uh-huh.
Have you ever experienced anything like this in your life?
Oh, yeah.
It's funny how people like to segregate themselves.
Police officers with police officers, lawyers with lawyers, rich people with rich people, the homeless shelter together with the homeless.
You mean the rich people don't hang out with you, Don?
No.
They don't?
No.
Well, I get what you're talking about. And my question to those so-called religious people, and obviously I have some problems with individuals who are immersed in organized religions. Would you say that's true, Don?
Yes.
You were very quick to respond to that. Yes. Again, it's not the people I don't like. It's the organizations and the rules that they project upon everyone and the expectations. You should do this, this, and this. And so those organizations sort of project the image, well, you can hang out with other people like us, but don't you dare hang out with other people. I know a few years ago, Don, I was in Missouri, near Branson, Missouri. And I was with a church group at the time that was associated with Mr. Ted. And somebody that I knew said, oh, Mike, we're going to the Shoney's. They're in Branson. Come and join us. And so there were going to be about 24 people from the group I was with. And I showed up at the restaurant, and as I was walking towards the table where I wanted to go, actually it was like a couple of tables put together, I saw another group. Don, there was not a shadow of a doubt in my mind that this other group was a similar church group. That at one time in our lives, we may have attended the same church service. We might have sat right down next to each other, might have shared a hymnal as we sang.
Mm-hmm.
But when that group found out that I was with the other group, oh, their noses went up in the air, and they didn't want a thing to do with me. We might have actually been college students together once upon a time. But now they were in group A and I was in group B. Now I was perfectly willing to chat with them. I would have loved to sit down right there and talked about what they were doing and how things were going and what they believed and what they didn't believe. And yet they gave me the cold shoulder. They let me know, you're not one of us. We are segregated here. You go somewhere else because we don't want you. And oddly enough, we probably shared, think about this, Don, we probably shared 99.9% agreement on all biblical doctrines. And yet, I wasn't officially a part of them. So I was not welcome. I will never forget